And we are back on the backstory and on the radio in Washington, D.C., the capital of the Empire of Lies, on 105.5 FM, AM 1390. Now, joined from Moscow, Russia, by a great guest and great friend of the show, Sonja Van den End. Hey, Sonja, how you doing?
Hi, Lee. Fine, thank you. Thanks.
So what's the latest on the terror attack yesterday in Bryansk, Russia, near the Ukrainian border? Is there any new news on that?
Yes, there is. They just found out, the FSB found out that actually behind the terror attack is a neo-Nazi. His name is Denis, I think, Kushelin. He is a hardline neo-Nazi. He is actually Russian, born in Russia, but he emigrated somehow to Europe. And the latest news is that he was, before he left for Ukraine, he was living in Cologne in Germany, and he was threatening Russia and so on. So he is actually in the neo-Nazi scene, and then he went to Ukraine. He joined, of course, a battalion, or perhaps the Ukrainian army. I think it's a battalion. And they carried out this terror attack. And I saw some footage actually, and it is all cars are demolished, private cars. Huh? Children, one child is hurt, people were killed there. So yeah, it's for sure, it's neo-Nazis behind it, the neo-Nazi scene who joined the Ukrainian army or some battalion.
And let me ask this, I had heard originally that they may have been hostages taken. Did that turn out to be true, Sonja?
As far as I know now, there are no hostages. It's under control right now. So it's actually, I don't know if they catch them, but I didn't hear anything. So I don't know about this.
It was confusing when the first stories came out. But yeah, Thanks for clarifying what the latest is. And again, I think no one's surprised neo-Nazi terrorists are behind this, right? Because that is, Putin's been saying the entire military operation that he wants to denazify Ukraine, and he gets made fun of by the Western media, who act like that's a crazy thing to say, but it's a real problem in Ukraine, and they used to admit that. Remember that, Sonja? Remember when the mainstream media used to actually talk about Ukrainian Nazis, Sonja?
Of course, and it's they laughed about it and thought, oh, President Putin is still living somehow in the Second World War where there were Nazis, and nowadays the Ukrainians are not Nazis, they're just normal people who like to have freedom and democracy, this whole story. But actually they are. We can see it now. We can see it from this terrorist attack, but also, me myself, I was in Azov Steel Factory, and I saw all the remnants of the Nazi symbols, even Mein Kampf. I told that before, I think. So there's a real problem. And also in Kiev, they have these marches going on every year with torches, remembering Bandera. And so it's a real problem. And even Western press, I think before, somehow after 2014, they reported about this problem, and they know it, but of course they use them as proxies. It's like the same as in Syria, that they call them rebels instead of ISIS or other terrorist groups. So of course he's right. They're real Nazis. We can see it now.
And they act almost like ISIS, in that I see a lot of people getting recruited from around the world to come fight for the Nazis in Ukraine. Have you seen that, Sonja?
Yeah.
People?
Yeah, I've seen it, and what I said, it's not exactly the same, but it's actually the same as what they did in Syria and Iraq, because then their ideology was Islam, and now its ideology is Nazi, but actually it's the same idea, they're mercenaries, they are trained somehow through Europe or US, maybe a few, but at least in Europe and the UK, to go to now Ukraine and fight to the Russians. And this is what they did with ISIS. They all went from every country in Europe, all these so-called volunteers. They were going to fight in Syria and in Iraq. And you remember, I think, even in Kambuka at that time, they were trained. The ex-soldiers from Saddam Hussein and other people were trained in Kambuka also to fight again. So this is what the US and Europe, I must say, NATO is doing for many, many years. And it's terrible when you think about it. They use their proxies and they're so blind in Western media, or not blind. They have an agenda, of course. They cannot say the truth, what is really going on. They still don't do with Syria, I know that, but one day the truth will come out. I'm sure of it.
I'm glad you corrected yourself there, because I'm convinced it's not that they're blind, because you and I have talked about this before. The truth isn't that hard to find out. In fact, the guy from NBC, the reporter from NBC, I think he stumbled into truth. I think he went to Crimea and he talked to people, and they did not say what he thought they were going to say. But that's all the video he had. Everyone in the interview said, "I like being under Russia." Right? And so then he did a report that was accidentally good. I don't think his goal was to get something good, but I think because he'd been so propagandized himself, he didn't think anyone would like it there. But he found out the truth is not hard to find out. Ask people that identify as Russian and they love Russia, right? That's what you found out.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, that's right. And what you said, maybe he was so blind or indoctrinated, well, because NBC, we know it's mainstream media, that he was surprised. And now he has the consequences that he's also on the Miro Veret death list. So maybe he didn't think about that either. But myself, I went to Crimea in September, and I know it's when you see it's more Russian than Russia itself. That's what I experienced there. So that is most likely what he is experiencing or has experienced. But I don't know, if he doesn't have any other footage, he should say something. Or maybe he thought, well, I have to bring the truth finally, because I don't know his thinking, of course, but the truth came out. And I think a lot of people are now, wondering that the mainstream media brought so many actually rubbish the last, 1 year. So it's great what he did. It's good.
Now, I want to talk about what's going on in Bakhmut, the Bakhmut region, in a second. But I should mention, it's about the 1 year anniversary that you've been living in Moscow, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Today it's 1 year. So I came last year, 3rd of March, and intending to stay 2 weeks or something, and now I'm here 1 year. So, but actually I like it very much. So I didn't regret it at all. I'm happy I'm here.
Let's say happy anniversary to you in
Thanks.
Moscow, a 1 year anniversary. And what have you learned, just in general? Anything you want to say? What have you learned in a year living in Moscow? What surprised you, and what stood out for you? Sonja?
Well, I learned about the culture in Russia, because I didn't know the culture very good. I knew it from reading, and I knew it from Syria when I saw some Russians there. And they have actually a beautiful culture. That's what I think. I always thought Russian people are a little bit like German people. They are a little bit closed, but that's wrong, because that's just the outside. But when you speak to them, they are very lovely people. You can, they make you feel at home, and they have some little parts of, Eastern people, you can say, Middle Eastern people maybe. So that's what astonished me here. That's what I like. And also that people, go on. They know there's somehow a special operation going on or a war going on, but they keep on going. And that's good. Sometimes you think it's weird because there's a war. I call it a war now going on, and people are, I don't know if they speak a lot about it. I suppose they do, but you cannot notice it. It's what I meant with closed, But I think they are very strong people, and you can see that now, because the whole world, nearly the whole Western world for sure, is against them, and they're still tough and going on, and that's what they don't give up, and that's it's good. It's very good. So yeah, that's actually what I have learned here.
Especially after the terror attack in Bryansk yesterday, are you seeing the people stay together? You know, Putin talks about that in speeches. The Russians people resolved and we're sticking together. But are you seeing the same thing? Are you seeing the Russians come together and pro-Russian? Are you seeing it, Sonja?
Yeah, I think that they are now, because we can see signs everywhere. I was at the Red Square tonight, and you can see the Z and the V. So I think they are close together. And my conclusion is that people who don't want to be part of the special military operation, who are opposite, of course you have opposition, they left, a lot of them, I mean, I think it's about 300,000, so it's not really a lot on 146 million. So, but they most likely left, and yeah, I think the ones who are here, they know, but they start to realize that they have to fight on, because I think by now they know that the West is against them. There's no reason that you cannot reason with them. The whole West is against them. It's propaganda, and I hope they can see through the propaganda, and I think they do now. So that's good. So they can, stay together.
Well, so one of the techniques of propaganda that the West uses all the time is simply they apply different standards. They apply a double standard, one to the West and one to Russia. And so the thing I'm seeing right now is a lot of talk in the Western press about the danger of China joining with Russia. And what they mean by that is selling weapons. And the idea that the West should complain the country is selling weapons. Look, the West is actually giving targeting coordinates to Ukraine, right? The U.S. is basically saying, here's where to hit the missiles. And so giving weapons is nothing compared to that. So have you seen the attempt to, demonize Russia, demonize China for selling weapons to Russia? The ridiculous double standard on that, Sonja. Have you seen that?
Yes, sure. Actually, today it was in Western propaganda, what they call news then, media. And of course, before that, I mean, they were trying already with this balloon story, It was a UFO, and then it was a Chinese spy balloon. So they try since, I think, a long time already, because everybody, I think, nearly knows there was this movie, this film from John Pilger, the next war that was with China, the next war with China. And it's in there for, I think, years already, like it is with Russia. They want, but they're afraid, of course, because China is a very big country. But they are so stupid if they have China and Russia, against the West. How stupid can you be to do such a thing? But this is preparing slowly now. Scholz, the Bundeskanzler Scholz from Germany, he is to the US, I think, today. And I most likely speak about this point as well, because, they want somehow war with China, but I think they are, I hope they are still a little bit afraid to do it, but that's what we hope, because then it's really, it's terrible. But they speak about it in the media. And before that, in my country of birth, I must say, the Netherlands, this was this whole thing going on. I made an article about it this week, about these chips from ASML. And this is already the trade war was going on under Trump, and now, going on again. So, yeah, it's the same rhetoric, what they do. They started with Russia this way, and they started with China. So they are really criminals, crazy.
And we saw at the G20 recently, they held the G20 recently in India, and the G20 as a whole had a resolution against Russia, but the only people who didn't sign on to that were China. So I'm going to point out that the alliance between China and Russia is stronger than ever. It's obvious, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It was already good, in the Syrian times, when you had all the time they had these resolutions at the UN. But now it's very good because China also knows that, yeah, the West is gone crazy. They want war. I mean, and China, well, they made a pact, I think, with Russia, and it's good. But also at the G20, you saw that Western countries wanted to pose more, or they want to declare more sanctions, or they did already, but they want to make a statement. But the other countries, they don't want it. You can see it, like India is neutral actually. So countries not belonging to the West are, yeah, I think they will not join the West in their sanctions, for sure not. So the West is a lonely place now.
By the way, the U.S. threatens people if they don't vote on the resolutions. You know, these resolutions, they say, if you don't vote for us, this resolution, we got all kinds of contracts. We can put sanctions on you. So it's not a fair vote, right? Whenever they have these resolutions, it's not an indicator of what the country actually thinks, I think. So we have a clip. Actually, this is Foreign Minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, and this is him speaking English at the G20 conference. He's being questioned, and just the fact that the guy can speak English at all is impressive to me, because we have a State Department in the U.S. where they can't walk and chew gum at the same time. But, you know, so here's Lavrov. Hit it.
How has the war in Russia, how has this war affected Russia's energy interests? Energy. Is it pivoting towards Asia? And is it the deepening relationship about gas into India and all that she's asking about?
You know, the war which we are trying to stop and which was launched against us using Ukrainian people, of course, it influenced the policy of Russia, including energy policy, and the blunt way to describe what is the change, what changed, we would not anymore rely on any partners in the West. We would not allow them to blow the pipelines again. By the way, we asked for investigation, and immediately this investigation request was denied. The Americans called it a nonsense, and when Seymour Hersh published his findings, you saw what the reaction of Europeans and the Americans was. Germany was humiliated, and physically, and morally, and in any other way. Everything which is happening now is to reduce Europe to subordinate player for the United States, to undercut European competitive edge, and of course to ruin the economic link between Russia and the European Union. This is very obvious. So be it. If this is the choice of them, which fits, by the way, in the rhetoric, in the narrative that what is going on is existential for the West from the point of view of its ability to dominate, and everything fits into place.
Thank you, Minister.
And the energy policy of Russia will be oriented towards reliable partners, credible partners. India and China are certainly among them.
So Lavrov not hesitating to bring up the blowing up of Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And that's significant now because Olaf Scholz from Germany is in D.C. visiting Biden like a serval lapdog. So I think it was great that Lavrov pointed out this was humiliating for Germany, right? Was the Nord Stream 2 pipeline terrorism and Germany's reaction to it? Does it show who's really in charge, Germany or the U.S.? What does it show the German people, do you think, Sonja?
It shows that the US is in total control of Germany and the rest of Western Europe, for sure. but especially Germany, you know, they never left actually after 1945. They still are occupying Germany, and I think a lot of Germans know that. Especially in Eastern Germany, there are many demonstrations every Monday evening. And if you speak to Germans there, I did before when I lived in Germany, they all say the same thing. Germany is occupied by the US, and you can also see that with all the military bases in Germany, like Ramstein. This is the most largest one, and it's obvious that, yeah, the US is in control, because I remember from this Ramstein base, a lot of drones were shot to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Syria. So Germany is in control, and Scholz has to go now to the US like a little dog, you know, sitting there with Biden, who is not 100% himself, if I say it politely. So he has to do what the US tells him to do, because in German media there's nothing said about it, and there's no press, no German press there, so that says it all. Germany is, yeah, like a colony from the US, and this Nord Stream pipeline, yeah, for sure, it's done in accordance with the US and what we know now with the UK, and it's blown up probably by Sweden, Norway. So yeah, I think the people should be free themselves from the US in Germany, but of course it's difficult.
Now, let's talk about Bakhmut. I'm seeing the Western media start to admit, which means Ukraine's admitting it. By the way, the Western media, here's the way they work journalistically. Ukraine says it, they repeat it. That's their method. If Ukraine says it, they don't do anything to verify it's a fact. They just repeat it. So they're now repeating that Ukraine is admitting that Bakhmut is in the pincher. It's surrounded on three sides. There's only one way out of the city of Bakhmut. And Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, is urging Ukraine to take that route and get the people and the soldiers out of there, right? And Ukraine seems to be admitting now that they are in the pincher. Are you seeing the same thing? The Ukraine is admitting, basically, I won't say defeat because it's not happened yet, but the stage right before defeat. I mean, Bakhmut's going down, right, Sonja?
Yes, it's going down. Today, Yevgeny Prigozhin made a statement for, you know, I saw this in the Russian, but it's available with English translation. And he actually told Ukraine President Zelensky to withdraw from Bakhmut or Artemovsk, because it's done there. The Russians nearly took it, and they're now, what he said, are putting old men and young boys to fight there. So, I mean, it's over. And there was already rumors, I think last days in the media, the Western media, that Zelensky had a tough time to defend Artemovsk, but maybe he's holding on and so on. Still, some outlets are saying, oh no, you know, they're still holding on, but actually it's lost. It's lost. It's what happened. It happened. Finally, it's for maybe the Western people who listen, it's not a big issue because Bakhmut is, okay, a city, not a very large city, but it's very important because it's going to, you know, Luhansk, and it's like a border town somehow, but Luhansk, Lysychansk there, that's very important area, so they can most likely conquer more places there back. So that's the whole idea. And no, it's for definitely it's gone. Bakhmut, or Artemovsk, how it's called in Russian, it's now back to Russia.
And it seems like Bakhmut falling, it seems like it's logistically important. In other words, for the resupply of the Ukrainians, it seems like it's an important city for that. So it seems like Bakhmut falling will lead to other regional. What I'm seeing people say is that Bakhmut is the first step to all of Donbass falling. Are you hearing the same thing, Sonja?
Yeah, hearing the same thing. So yeah, that's what I meant with, yeah, it's very important actually, you know, for above the Luhansk and so on. It's important, and yeah, the Ukrainians will have a tough time to get resupplied there, and the forces there. So yeah, it's very important, and yeah, we will see how it will develop further.
And also, by the way, I mentioned that Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, is in Ukraine, and you don't go to Ukraine from the U.S. without bringing your Biden administration MasterCard, because Merrick Garland's over there. So we're giving another, I think, $400 million to Ukraine, because we all, you know, whenever someone goes over, they bring millions and billions of dollars. So is there any sign that all the money that the U.S. is giving to Ukraine is actually doing any good? In other words, what's it accomplishing? All this money that the U.S. is giving to Ukraine, is it accomplishing military victories? We've heard Leopard tanks are over there now. So is it all over? Sonja?
No, because I think, I'm not, of course, a military specialist, but I think you also need the people who can, you know, sit behind a HIMARS and shoot those rockets, and they have to be trained. And I think a lot of Ukrainians who are maybe poor soldiers somehow from the villages there, and they are not trained very well because maybe there was no time to train them. So this is why the US, of course, comes in, or UK, or the NATO generals. But it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And these leopards, they are old ones, and they're not many. So the only thing I think that makes what I heard was very important if the Abraham tanks come. But still, it doesn't change the battlefield. I think it's, you know, I think the Russian army is more prepared. They didn't prepare especially for war, but they are more prepared. They have a better army than, of course, the Ukrainians. So this is the whole point.
No. And Sonja, it's getting late there in Moscow, so we'll let you go. But great appearance as always. Sonja Van den End, great appearance, Sonja. Congratulations on your year anniversary in Moscow, and have a great night.
Great, thanks, Lee. Thanks for speaking to you, and have a nice day. I think it's there. Thanks.
Yes.
Speak again. Okay.
Thank you much, Sonja.
Bye.
Great appearance. And let's take a short break, and we'll be back more on